Tonight, I want you to see imagination, not as a fleeting fancy, not as a daydream you entertain for a moment, but as the creative power of God Himself within you. It is imagination that creates reality. What you see outwardly in this solid world of facts is but the shadow cast by your inner arrangement of thoughts, feelings, and assumptions. If you will dare to assume that your imagination is the only reality and that your outer world is but its reflection, you will hold in your hand the key to freedom, for the world is yourself pushed out. Change the imaginal activity within you, and you will change the facts of life. Tonight I will give you 10 steps, 10 living principles by which you can prove for yourself that imagination is not a plaything of the mind, but the actual creative cause of everything you experience. Follow these steps not as theory, but as practice, and you will discover that imagination truly rules the world. What? Recognizing imagination is the only reality. My friends, let us begin where all creation begins, within the human imagination. If tonight you hear only this and take it to heart, you will have received the secret of life itself. Imagining creates reality, not sometimes, not occasionally, but always. The world you now see with your eyes, the facts you call unchangeable, are nothing more than the outpicturing of your inner activity. Life does not move from without to within, it moves from within to without. Your outer world is yourself pushed out. Every circumstance, every person you meet, every condition in which you find yourself has its origin in your imagination. If you wish to change your world, do not first seek to rearrange the outer shadows. Do not attempt to wrestle with facts or struggle with people. That is a fruitless task. The outer world is but a reflection, a mirror, a shadow. If you strike at the shadow, you accomplish nothing. But if you change the image that casts the shadow must change of necessity. Imagination is not some fanciful dream state. It is the creative power of God within you. When you imagine, you are not playing with idle thoughts. You are setting causes into motion that will harden into fact. Your every imaginal act, if persisted in, must project itself upon the screen of space. That is the law. You may ignore it, you may remain unconscious of it, but you cannot escape it, for imagining creates reality. Think of it this way. What is your present environment but the outpicturing of forgotten imaginal acts? The conversations you had with yourself in silence, the fears you entertained, the hopes you cherished, the pictures you rehearsed night after night, they clothed themselves in flesh and walked this world as your experience. That is why I tell you, your imagination is the only reality. Everything else is appearance. Now, to recognize imagination as reality requires a bold shift, for the senses scream otherwise. They tell you of lack, of failure, of sickness, of limitation. They present to you the world of facts and insist that this is real. But I say to you, facts are but frozen imaginal states. They endure only as long as you give them life. Withdraw your attention, and they fade. Supply them with new attention, and they dissolve to make way for new creations. Let me give you an illustration. Suppose you find yourself in want. Your bank account is low. The senses say, this is reality. You feel the pressure. You hear the demand of bills. You taste the bitterness of lack. That you say is fact. And yet within yourself you can imagine the opposite. You can hear the banker tell you, your account is in order. You can feel the joy of financial freedom. You can see yourself giving generously, living abundantly. If you accept this imaginal scene as reality, and if you persist in it with feeling, the shadow world must bend to match the inner world. Then the so-called fact of lack dissolves, and the new fact of abundance takes its place. Do you see what this means? It means you are not a victim. You are not at the mercy of circumstances, of governments, of economies, of other people. You are the cause. You are the operant power. The world is yourself pushed out. To change the world, you change yourself. To change yourself, you change the imaginal activity in which you indulge daily. But here is the great stumbling block. Men and women do not believe imagination is reality. They relegate it to the realm of dreams, to fantasy, to fiction. They say, be realistic, face the facts. I tell you, you are never facing facts. You are always facing the outpicturing of your inner assumptions. And if you would face reality, turn inward, for inward is the only reality. Outward is but its echo. This is why Scripture tells us we look not at the things which are seen, but at the things which are unseen. The unseen is imagination. It is invisible to the physical eye, but it is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. The unseen imaginal act, if persisted in, clothes itself in form and becomes the seen. Therefore, the first step, the very foundation of this lecture series, is recognition. Recognition that imagination is not idle, not empty, not secondary, but primary. It is the first cause. It is the substance. It is reality. When you truly recognize this, you will cease to argue with facts. You will cease to complain about circumstances. Instead, you will turn within to the creative workshop of your imagination, and there you will fashion the world you desire. Let us make it practical. Tonight, when you go to bed, before you drift into sleep, take a single desire of your heart. Do not worry about how it shall come. Construct within your mind a simple, vivid scene that implies its fulfillment. If you long for reconciliation, imagine a friend embracing you joyfully. If you long for health, imagine yourself running, climbing, full of vigor. If you long for success, imagine the congratulatory handshake of one who says, "Well done." Take that scene and live in it, feel it, until it possesses you, then drop off to sleep. That act, though unseen by the world, is a real creation. It sets in motion unseen currents that must, by law, project themselves as fact. I promise you, if you do this faithfully, you will prove for yourself that imagination is the only You will watch the outer world rearrange itself, sometimes swiftly, sometimes subtly, but always inevitably, to mirror your inner assumption. You will stand amazed at the power you hold, and then you will know that the kingdom of heaven is within you, that God is your own wonderful human imagination. So I say, begin here. Recognize imagination as reality. Stop bowing before facts. Stop surrendering to appearances. Stop calling the shadow the substance. You are the substance. Your imaginal acts are the substance. Everything else is shadow. And when you dare to stand upon this recognition, you will walk this earth not as a beggar, but as a creator. You will no longer plead with life, but command it. You will no longer cry for help, but exercise your divine power. Friends, that is the first step. Without it, the rest cannot stand. But with it, you have the key in your hand. For the key is this: imagining creates reality. Accept it, recognize it, live by it, and the world will prove it to you in ways that leave you in no doubt. Defining your desire clearly. When we have recognized imagination as the only reality, the next movement is to define what it is we truly want. For unless you know what you desire, your imagination is but a wandering stream, flowing here and there without direction. Desire is the compass of imagination. It gives shape, structure, and focus to the power within you. Now many shrink from desire. They call it selfish, or vain, or impractical. But I tell you, your desire is the voice of God within you, urging you to fuller expression of life. The very moment you feel a deep longing for something beyond your present state, it is life seeking greater manifestation through you. To deny desire is to deny the creative impulse of God. The first great act, then, is not to run from desire, but to embrace it, to define it, to give it clear expression. Do not say, "I want to be happy," for that is vague. Happiness must be clothed in form. Ask yourself, what to me would imply I am happy? Perhaps it is living in a lovely home. Perhaps it is traveling freely. Perhaps it is being united with a loved one. The form differs, but the essence is the same. To make desire operative, you must define it clearly. Let me pause here to say, do not confuse desire with daydreaming. Daydreaming is wishful fancy, without faith, without form, without focus. True desire is a burning fire, a conviction of the heart, a magnetic pull toward fulfillment. When you define your desire, you give imagination a definite mold into which it pours its creative power. So tonight, let each of you ask yourself honestly, what do I want? Not what the world says I should want, not what my neighbor desires, not what convention approves, but what I, in the secret of my soul, long for. That longing is the seed of creation. Perhaps you say, "But I have many desires." That is fine, but for the purpose of practice, choose one. Take the one that stands out, the one that carries the strongest emotional charge. It may be for health, it may be for reconciliation, it may be for success in your chosen work. Whatever it is, select it and define it. Until you do, your imagination is scattered. But once defined, it is as a river channeled into a mighty current. Do not be afraid of desiring greatly. The infinite life in you seeks expansion, not contraction. If you desire wealth, define what wealth would mean for you. Do not measure it by another scale. To some, wealth is millions. To others it is freedom from debt, the ability to give generously, the capacity to live without strain. Whatever it is for you, claim it boldly. If you desire love, define it. Do not leave it vague. What would it feel like to be happily married, or deeply cherished, or surrounded by true companionship? Give it a scene. Give it words. Give it substance. For desire undefined is imagination wasted. Now once you define your desire, you must lift it to the level of conviction. You must not treat it as a passing whim. You must say to yourself, this is what I want. This is already mine in imagination. I claim it. I accept it. That acceptance is the first step of faith. Without it, desire remains a dream. With it, desire begins its journey to fact. Let me illustrate with a story. A woman once came to me, desiring reconciliation with her estranged husband. At first, her words were vague. She said, I want peace. I want happiness. I asked her, what would imply peace to you? What would imply happiness? She thought for a moment, then said, if he and I were speaking again as we once did, if I could hear his voice calling me affectionately, if I could feel his arms around me, that would imply peace. There, her desire took form. It was no longer a cloud, but a clear image. She defined it. Then, in imagination, she heard his voice. She felt his arms. She lived in that state night after night, and in a matter of weeks, what seemed impossible became reality. The man returned and the two were reconciled. The key was defining her desire. Do not say, I don't know what I want. You do know. Beneath the noise of doubt, beneath the fear of disappointment, there lies the simple truth of your heart's longing. Acknowledge it. Define it. Then give yourself to it with feeling. Remember, life does not respond to vague wishes. It responds to definite imaginal acts. A wish is weak. A defined desire is strong. A wish floats. A defined desire anchors. A wish is dismissed. A defined desire is heard. So let us now make it practical. If tonight your desire is health, do not merely say, I want to be well. Define what being well means. Does it mean rising each morning with energy? Does it mean running with ease, climbing stairs without strain? Breathing freely, living joyfully. Choose a simple act that implies health and imagine it as real. If your desire is wealth, do not merely say, I want money. Define what money means. Does it mean seeing a certain balance in your account? Does it mean paying bills without concern? Does it mean helping others freely? Take one act that implies financial security and imagine it as true. If your desire is love, do not merely say, I want to be loved. Define what being loved means. Does it mean receiving a phone call from someone dear? Does it mean hearing the words, I love you? Does it mean walking side by side, hand in hand? Choose one act that implies love and make it vivid in imagination. In defining your desire, keep it simple. Complexity scatters energy. Simplicity focuses it. One clear imaginal scene repeated with feeling is more powerful than 1,000 vague dreams. And let me add, do not measure your desire by what you think is possible. That is the great mistake. If you desire something and it burns in your heart, then it is possible. The very fact that you desire it is proof that life has already planted the seed. Do not ask, how could this ever be? That is not your concern. Your concern is only to define it clearly and assume it in imagination. The unseen bridges of incident will carry you from where you are to the fulfillment of that state. So tonight, as you retire, ask yourself, what do I truly want? Let the answer rise, not from fear, but from love. Define it clearly, picture it simply, accept it boldly, and know that in that acceptance, creation has already begun. This is the second great step. Without desire defined, imagination wanders. With desire defined, imagination builds. So define your desire, and you will give shape to the infinite power within you. Why? Constructing the end scene. Now that you have recognized imagination as the only reality and defined your desire clearly, the next step is to construct within yourself the scene that would imply your desire fulfilled. This, my friends, is the art of living from the end. You see, creation is finished. Every possible state already exists. There is nothing to be created in the sense of bringing forth something new. Rather, it is a matter of selecting and occupying the state you wish to experience. The way you select is through imagination. By constructing an end scene that implies your desire has already been realized. Notice what I said, the end, not the process, not the means, not the steps along the way, but the end. If you desire health, you do not imagine doctors, medicines, and procedures. You imagine yourself already strong, vibrant, free. If you desire wealth, you do not imagine the work of earning, the struggle of saving, or the waiting for opportunity. You imagine yourself already in possession of abundance. If you desire reconciliation, you do not imagine the letters you will write or the conversations you will initiate. You imagine the end, two hearts already united, harmony already restored. Why is this so vital? Because imagining the process keeps you in the process. Imagining the end lifts you to the state of fulfillment, and from that state, life itself weaves the bridge of incidents by which the outer world conforms. The how is not your concern. The how belongs to the law of being. Your concern is only the end. Let me illustrate. Suppose a man desires a promotion in his work. If he imagines speaking to his employer, writing reports, impressing others, he is imagining the means. That is not the end. But if he imagines himself sitting at the new desk, being congratulated by friends, enjoying the dignity and authority of his new position, that is the end. And from that imaginal end, the means will unfold naturally. You are told in Scripture, whatever you ask in prayer, believe that you have received it and it will be yours. Notice the tense, believe that you have received. That is the end. Not that you will receive, not that you might receive, but that you already have. That belief is nothing more than constructing and inhabiting the end scene. Now, how do we construct this scene? Begin with simplicity. Do not attempt a long drama with many moving parts. A short, vivid, sensory scene is sufficient. It must imply the fulfillment of your desire, and it must be one you can easily repeat until it takes on the tones of reality. For example, if your desire is to be married, you might imagine the simple scene of wearing a wedding ring and feeling its weight on your finger. You might imagine hearing someone call you my wife or my husband. That is enough. That small act implies the larger fulfillment. If your desire is financial freedom, you might imagine the scene of opening a wallet and seeing it full, or hearing a banker tell you, you have more than enough. Again, a small act implies the larger state. If your desire is health, you might imagine yourself running freely, climbing stairs with ease, or hearing a friend say, you look wonderful. That small moment implies complete wellness. The secret is implication. You do not need to imagine every detail of the journey. You need only imagine one simple act that, if true, would imply your desire fulfilled. That act is your seed. Plant it deeply in imagination, and it will grow into the full experience. Let me give you a living example. A man once desired to leave his country and settle abroad, but the way seemed impossible. He had no means, no permission, no visible hope. I asked him to define the end. He said, if I were truly abroad, I would write a letter to my family, telling them of my new life. I told him, then construct that letter. Write it in imagination. Feel yourself writing it. Hear your own voice, reading it aloud. He did this faithfully night after night. Soon opportunities appeared, unexpected, unplanned, and within months he was living abroad, just as he had imagined. The end constructed the means. Understand this well. Imagination works by implication. A simple scene repeated with feeling carries within it the entire harvest. The acorn implies the oak, the seed implies the tree, the ring on your finger implies marriage, the handshake implies success, the smile of a reconciled friend implies harmony. You need only construct the seed scene, but hear me carefully. The scene must be one you enter, not one you observe. Do not see yourself from the outside, as though watching a play. Enter the scene, live within it, feel yourself there, see with your own eyes, hear with your own ears, touch with your own hands. If you wish to imagine shaking hands with a friend, feel the grip of his hand in yours. If you wish to imagine holding a child, feel the weight in your arm. If you wish to imagine opening a bank statement, feel the paper between your fingers. Hear the words of satisfaction rising in your mind. Always enter the scene. Always experience it first person, and let the scene be alive with feeling, for imagination without feeling is barren. If you construct a scene coldly, mechanically, without conviction, it bears little fruit. But if you construct it with the warmth of emotion, the thrill of fulfillment, the joy of possession, then it is alive, and life responds to it. This is why I tell you, feeling is the secret. A vivid imaginal scene, charged with feeling, is the creative act itself. Out of that act, the shadow world must conform. You cannot escape it. It is law. Now some of you will say, but the facts deny my desire. The evidence opposes me. My senses contradict the scene. Yes, they do. and they always will, until the scene has time to harden into fact. You must ignore the evidence of the senses and remain loyal to the imaginal end. That loyalty is the great test. Can you persist in the end scene, night after night, even when everything outward seems to oppose you? If you can, you will prove the law. Think of the farmer. He plants the seed in the ground. He does not dig it up tomorrow to see if it is growing. He rests in confidence, knowing the unseen processes of life will bring it to fruition. So too with imagination. Plant the seed, water it with feeling, persist in it with faith, and leave the rest to the unseen law of life. Therefore I say to you, this third step is essential. Construct the end scene. Do not linger in the process. Do not worry over the how. Go straight to the end. Live in the end. Feel the end. And from the end, life will unfold the means. So tonight, choose the desire you defined. Ask yourself, what simple act, if true, would imply this desire fulfilled? Construct that act. Enter it. Live it. Feel it. Repeat it until it takes on the tones of reality. That scene, held faithfully, will weave itself into your waking world. For imagining creates reality, and the end scene is the seed of creation. 4. Entering the scene with feeling. Now that you have constructed the end scene, you must learn the great art of entering it with feeling. For imagination without feeling is like a body without breath. It has form but no life. It is feeling that animates the imaginal act, that gives it the vitality to reproduce itself in the outer world. Do not think for one moment that feeling is an afterthought. Feeling is the secret. Thought alone, cold and detached, remains barren. But thought clothed in feeling, thought warmed by the fire of emotion, becomes a living seed that must grow. So I say to you tonight, when you build your scene, do not look upon it as an observer. Enter it as a participant. See it through your own eyes. Hear it with your own ears. Touch it with your own hands. Smell the fragrance. Taste the flavor. Fill the scene with sensory richness. For the world within is as real as the world without, and when you feel it to be real, the outer world has no choice but to echo it. Let me give you an example. Suppose you desire reconciliation with a friend. You have constructed the simple end scene of shaking his hand, of hearing him say, "It's so good to see you again." Now do not watch yourself from the outside as though you were seated in the theater, observing two actors upon the stage. No, step into the role. Be the one shaking the hand. Feel the warmth of his palm in yours. Hear his voice vibrate in your ear. Feel the joy rise in your chest. See his eyes looking into yours. Enter the scene. Become it. Or suppose you desire financial freedom. You have constructed the end scene of opening a bank statement and seeing a balance that delights you. Again, do not observe yourself from afar. Enter the act. Feel the paper in your hand. See the numbers on the page. Hear the rustle of the statement. As you fold, feel the ease, the relief, the gratitude rising in you. Let the scene take on the tones of reality. It is here, in the entering, that many fail. They build the scene, but they remain outside it. They observe it as if it were happening to another. That will not do. You must climb into the scene and wear it as your garment. You must become one with it until you lose awareness of the old state and begin to feel yourself in the new. Now, when I speak of feeling, I do not mean merely emotion. I mean the deep conviction that something is real. Feeling is a knowing, a certainty, an inner acceptance that the imaginal act is true. It is when the scene ceases to feel like imagination and begins to feel like fact that creation is accomplished. Let us return to Scripture. You are told, when you pray, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours. That belief is nothing other than entering the scene with feeling. It is the inner conviction, the deep knowing that what you have imagined is already real. But you will ask, how do I generate this feeling? My senses deny it. The facts oppose it. How do I feel it real when the world tells me otherwise? And I answer, by practice, by repetition, by persistence. At first, it may seem unreal. The old state may press upon you with great force, but night after night, as you persist in entering the scene, something shifts. The imaginal act takes on a weight, a density, a reality, and soon it feels more natural than the old. That is the moment of creation. You see, feeling is not something you force. It is something you allow. You relax. You quiet the senses. You withdraw from the pressures of the day. And in the stillness, you slip into the scene. You let it envelop you. You let it persuade you. You let it become natural. And as it becomes natural, you feel it real. I will give you a practice. Tonight, when you go to bed, lie in a position of relaxation, as though already at peace. Let your body grow still. Then bring before your mind the end scene you have constructed. Enter it, see it, hear it, touch it. But above all, feel it. If your scene is a conversation, hear the words and feel the joy of hearing them. If your scene is an embrace, feel the warmth, the closeness, the comfort. If your scene is success, feel the pride, the satisfaction, the gratitude. Let the feeling rise until it saturates you. Then drift into sleep while still in that state. That is the creative act. Let me tell you a story. A man once longed for promotion. He defined his desire clearly. He constructed the end scene of shaking hands with his superior and hearing him say, "Congratulations." Each night he entered the scene. At first it felt hollow, like play acting, but he persisted. He felt the hand clasp. He heard the voice. He felt the thrill of success. Night after night he lived in that scene. Then in the waking world, a series of events unfolded, unexpected, unplanned, that led to his promotion. And when the day arrived, he stood in his office, shaking hands, hearing those very words. The imaginal act, entered with feeling, became fact. So I tell you, your imaginal scenes are not fantasies. They are realities, in a higher dimension, waiting to solidify into this one. Feeling is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. Without feeling, the scene remains a shadow. With feeling, it becomes substance. Therefore, do not treat this lightly. Practice it with earnestness. When you enter your scene, do not rush. Linger in it. Savor it. Let it soak into you. Repeat it until it feels real. And when it does, creation is complete. You need not strain or struggle. The outer world will rearrange itself naturally to reflect the inner. One final word. Do not confuse feeling with excitement. Sometimes the feeling of fulfillment is quiet, gentle, serene. Sometimes it is calm assurance rather than fiery emotion. The test is not the intensity of sensation, but the certainty of conviction. When you feel that it is so, whether in joy or in quiet peace, that is enough. So I say to you tonight, enter your scene, enter it with all your senses, enter it until you feel it real, enter it until you lose yourself in it, and then, having felt it real, let it go and rest, for the work is done. This, my friends, is the fourth great step. Without it, the imaginal act is lifeless. With it, the imaginal act is creation itself. Enter the scene with feeling, and you will prove that imagining creates reality. 5. Assuming the state of fulfillment. Having recognized imagination as the only reality, defined your desire clearly, constructed the end scene, and entered it with feeling, we now arrive at the great practice of assumption. For it is not enough to taste your desire in imagination once or twice, and then return to your old state. You must assume the new state as your dwelling place. You must wear it as your garment, walk in it, speak from it, and live as though it were already true. This is the great secret. Assumption, though denied by reason and opposed by the senses, if persisted in, will harden into fact. Let us examine what this means. When you assume a state, you accept it inwardly as natural. You no longer ask, will it happen? You no longer look to the future. You say within yourself, it has already happened. You think from the end, not of the end. You allow the new state to color your thoughts, shape your words, and influence your behavior. That is assumption. Now, I do not mean you are to run about declaring things outwardly, pretending before others, or boasting of what is not yet visible. That is play acting, and it leads to frustration. What I mean is inward assumption, silent, secret, sustained. In the privacy of your mind, you live in the end. You walk by faith, not by sight. You let the inner conviction rule over the outer evidence. Consider a simple illustration. Suppose you have assumed the state of wealth. Outwardly, the numbers may still show lack. The bills may still arrive. The bank account may still look small. But inwardly, you have accepted the state of abundance. You no longer think like a poor man. You no longer fear tomorrow. You no longer scheme and worry. Instead, you rest in the feeling that all is well, that you have enough, that life is full. That assumption, if sustained, will draw to you the means, the opportunities, the ideas, the people by which the outer matches the inner. Or suppose you desire health. Outwardly symptoms may persist. The body may still feel pain. But inwardly you have assumed the state of wellness. You no longer see yourself as sick. You no longer identify with weakness. You see yourself strong, vital, whole. You speak from health. You think from health. You feel from health. That assumption, if sustained, will externalize as healing. You see, the world outside has no choice but to conform to your inner assumption. For assumption is the seed of reality. Persisted in, it must objectify itself. But here lies the challenge. Men and women do not persist. They assume the new state for a moment, but then, confronted by the old evidence, they return to the old assumption. They vacillate between faith and doubt, between the new and the old, and so nothing changes. You must learn the art of persistence. Once you assume the state, remain faithful to it. Do not concern yourself with time. Do not ask when or how. Simply remain loyal to the end. Live from it. Speak from it. Think from it, and let the world take care of itself. Let me take you back to scripture. You are told, let the weak say, I am strong. Notice it does not say I will be strong. It says, I am. That is assumption. The weak man, though still weak in appearance, assumes strength. He declares it. He feels it. He lives in, and that assumption, though at first denied by sense, if persisted in, hardens into fact. Another passage tells us, call those things which be not as though they were. That is the law of assumption. You do not wait to see the change before you claim. You claim it first, inwardly, and the outward follows. So tonight I ask you, what state have you assumed? Are you assuming lack, fear, failure, or are you assuming abundance, confidence, success? Your life is nothing more than the harvest of your assumption. Change the assumption, and you change the harvest. Let me give you a practical method. Having entered your end scene with feeling, as we discussed earlier, you now carry that feeling into waking life. Throughout the day, whenever doubts arise, whenever the old state confronts you, quietly return to the new assumption. Say within yourself, I have already received. It is finished. Let that be your inner refrain. Suppose you desire reconciliation. Throughout the day, memories of separation may rise. Do not feed them. Instead, return inwardly to the assumption of harmony. Say to yourself, it is done. We are one. Live from that end. Suppose you desire success. During the day, you may face obstacles, setbacks, or discouragement. Do not surrender to them. Instead, assume success. Say to yourself, it is already mine. I have achieved. Feel the confidence of one who has already triumphed. Walk in that state. The key is persistence. Do not allow the senses to sway you. Do not measure by appearance. Do not be anxious about the time of fulfillment. Assume it is already so, and persist until the world reflects it. Let me share a story of assumption. A young woman desired to marry a particular man. Outwardly, the man seemed uninterested. Friends told her it was hopeless, but inwardly she assumed the state of being married. She imagined a ring on her finger. She heard him call her my wife. She lived from that end. Day by day, she carried the quiet assurance that it was so. Months passed, and circumstances shifted. The man's attitude changed. Affection grew, and in time, the marriage took place. Her persistence in assumption created the fact. Now some will say, is this not self-deception? Am I not lying to myself? I tell you no, you are not deceiving yourself. You are claiming the truth of the unseen over the lie of appearances. For appearances are temporary, but assumption, if persisted in, is eternal. Think of the caterpillar. Outwardly it crawls upon the ground, but inwardly it assumes the state of the butterfly. That assumption is mocked by appearance, yet it is true. In time the outer conforms to the inner. So with you, you may appear weak, but assume strength. You may appear poor, but assume wealth. You may appear alone, but assume love. Persist and the outer must bow to the inner. Therefore I urge you tonight. Live in assumption. Do not wait for proof. Do not delay until circumstances change. Assume the state now. Walk as though it were already so. Speak from the end. Think from the end. Feel from the end. That is faith in action. And when the old state rises up, as it surely will, do not fight it. Simply turn again to the new assumption. Say within yourself, that old state has no power. I am already fulfilled, and persist. This is the fifth great step. Without assumption, the imaginal act fades. With assumption, the imaginal act endures and hardens into fact. So assume boldly, assume faithfully, assume persistently, and you will prove in your own experience that assumption creates reality. 6. Persisting beyond appearances. When you assume the state of the wish fulfilled, as we spoke of in the last section, the greatest test you will face is the test of appearances. For the outer world, moving in the inertia of past states, will at first contradict your new assumption. It will whisper to you, look at the evidence. Nothing has changed. You are only imagining. And unless you learn the art of persistence, you will abandon your assumption and fall back into the old state. This is why so many begin with hope and end with despair. They taste the joy of the new state for a moment, but when the old shadows rise, they surrender. They believe the shadow more than the substance. They believe the lie of appearances more than the truth of imagination. But I say to you, persist. Do not bow to appearances. Do not measure reality by what the senses report. The senses report only what is fading, what is past. Imagination reveals what is coming, what is eternal. If you cling to imagination, the outer must yield. Consider the farmer. He plants a seed in the soil. For days he sees nothing. The ground looks the same. If he were impatient, he might dig up the seed and say, it is not working. But the wise farmer knows the seed is alive. He persists in watering, in caring, in trusting the unseen process. In time, the seed breaks forth. So it is with your assumption. The imaginal act is the seed. Appearances may deny it at first, but beneath the surface, the work is being done. Your persistence waters the seed. Your faith protects it. And in due season, it must emerge. Let us take an example. Suppose you assume the state of financial abundance. You live in the feeling of wealth, of security, of freedom. Yet tomorrow, the bills arrive. The bank account still reads the same. If you believe the senses, you say, it has failed. But if you persist, you say, this is only the shadow of the old state. My assumption is the reality. It is already done. And you return inwardly to the feeling of abundance. If you persist, the world will reorganize itself. New opportunities will appear. Unexpected avenues will open. And abundance will take form. Or suppose you assume health. You imagine yourself whole, strong, yet the body still aches. The doctor still speaks of illness. If you surrender to that, you undo your assumption. But if you persist, if you say within yourself, though the outer denies it, I know I am whole, and return again and again to the feeling of health, the body must obey. Persistence is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. Without it, the imaginal act fades like a dream. With it, the imaginal act becomes flesh. Now let me remind you, persistence is not strain, nor is it anxious effort. Persistence is quiet loyalty to the end. It is the refusal to be moved by appearances. It is the inward knowing, repeated and sustained, that is done. How do you persist? By returning again and again to the end. When doubts rise, you do not wrestle with them. You turn away and feel again the joy of fulfillment. When the outer world mocks, you do not answer. You remain silent and return inwardly to the assumption. You let the inner conviction be greater than the outer evidence. In scripture we read, he that endureth to the end shall be saved. Endurance here means persistence. Salvation means fulfillment. If you persist to the end, you cannot fail. Let me share a story. A man once wrote to me, saying he desired to free himself from a position he found unbearable. He assumed the state of freedom, of working in a new environment, of joy in his daily life. But weeks passed, and nothing changed. His colleagues mocked him. His family told him to be realistic. Yet inwardly he persisted. Night after night, he imagined the letter of release, the conversation with friends about his new life, the satisfaction of freedom. At times he was tempted to doubt, but he returned always to the end. After 3 months, the unexpected happened. The company dissolved his department, offered him generous compensation, and through a series of events, he was placed in the very field he had imagined. His persistence beyond appearances carried him to fulfillment. The outer world is slow to change because it is the echo of old assumptions. It is the smoke of yesterday's fire. But do not let the smoke deceive you. Tend the new fire within. Persist, and the smoke will clear. Let me illustrate further. Suppose you desire reconciliation with a loved one. You imagine harmony, closeness, affection, but the phone remains silent. The distance continues. If you measure by that, but if you persist in the feeling of reunion, if you hold fast to the joy of harmony, life will rearrange itself. Circumstances will conspire. Conversations will arise. Hearts will soften, but only if you persist. So tonight I urge you, make persistence your watchword. The secret is not in the one-time act, but in the sustained assumption. Do not give the senses dominion. Do not yield to appearances. Remain faithful to the end. And when you feel weary, remember this. The very resistance you face is proof of the reality of your assumption. The old state clings, but it is dying. The new state lives, but it requires your loyalty. If you persist, the new will swallow the old. Let us return to Scripture again. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come, it will not tarry. Do you hear it? Though appearances deny, though time seems slow, the end is certain. Your assumption, persisted in, cannot fail. So I say to you, do not be dismayed when the outer world contradicts you. Expect it. Know it is only the shadow of what was. Keep your eyes on the unseen, for the unseen is eternal. Persist in the assumption, and the unseen will become the seen. Let me end this section with a practical exercise. Each night before you sleep, return to the end. Feel it as though it were true. When doubts rise during the day, gently but firmly turn again to that end. Do not argue with appearances. Do not analyze the how. Simply return to the end. Make it your dwelling place. If you will do this, if you will persist beyond appearances, you will discover that imagination is stronger than fact, that assumption is stronger than circumstance, that persistence is stronger than time, and you will prove in your own experience that nothing can withstand the sustained imaginal act. So persist, hold fast, remain loyal, and what you dare to assume and persist in will, in time, stand before you as undeniable fact. 7. Living in the end is a permanent state. When I speak of imagination, I am not speaking of a passing fancy. I am not speaking of a daydream entertained for a moment, then forgotten. When the world presses in, I am speaking of a way of life, a way of being, a way of dwelling permanently in the end you have chosen. For unless you make the end your home, your assumption will remain a visitor, soon to leave when appearances knock at your door. To live in the end is to relocate the center of your being. It is to shift your dwelling place from the old self into the new self. It is to think, to feel, to act as though the wish fulfilled is already your reality. Not in moments only, but as your permanent state. Now hear me well. The outer world will never give you permission to live in the end. It will always say, not yet, not now, someday perhaps. But imagination says, now, already, it is done. And if you accept the voice of imagination and dwell there faithfully, the outer world must bend to it. Let me give you an illustration. Suppose you desire to be free from debt and to enjoy financial plenty. To live in the end means more than imagining wealth in a single act before sleep. It means carrying yourself in the dignity of one who is free. It means speaking from the consciousness of abundance, not poverty. It means making choices as though lack has no claim on you, not foolishly or rashly, but inwardly secure, inwardly established. Or suppose you desire to be loved, to share harmony with a partner. Living in the end does not mean waiting anxiously for the call, nor measuring each day by whether the outer evidence appears. It means walking in the assurance of love. It means feeling yourself already embraced, already cherished. It means releasing the tension of waiting, for you already are what you seek. To live in the end is to drop the thought of becoming and to rest in being. Becoming always says not yet. Being says I am. And when you say I am, the world answers in kind. But here is the challenge. The mind is restless. It loves to wander back to the old self. It loves to measure by the senses. It says, look, nothing has changed. And so the work is not in creating a new each day, but in remaining in the end, unmoved by what seems to be. Do you recall the words, "Be still and know that I am God"? Stillness here means rest in the end. It means ceasing from struggle, ceasing from effort, ceasing from chasing. It means abiding in the finished state, knowing it is done. Now let me be practical. How do you live in the end as a permanent state? You do it by carrying the feeling with you into all situations. When you rise in the morning, you rise as the new self. When you go about your day, you walk as the new self. When you speak with others, you speak as one who already is what you desire to be. You refuse to entertain the old identity. You refuse to think as though you lack. You refuse to imagine as though you are still waiting. This does not mean forcing a move. It means choosing again and again to return to the end. At first, the old self will tug at you. Old habits will whisper. But if you persist, the new self becomes natural. The end becomes your dwelling place. Let me share a story. A woman once desired healing. For years she lived with a condition that seemed immovable. She imagined health at night, but by day she returned to speaking of illness, thinking of illness, acting as one afflicted, and so her imaginal act never took root. But then she learned to live in the end. She began to speak as one healed. She began to act as though vitality were hers. She refused to identify with sickness, and within months, her body conformed to her new dwelling place. She did not heal by effort. She healed by abiding. You see, living in the end is not straining. It is relaxing into identity. It is ceasing to identify with what you do not desire and resting in what you do. In Scripture, the story of the prodigal son illustrates this. He left his father's house, squandered his wealth, lived among swine, but the moment he decided, "I will arise and go to my father," the feast was already prepared. The robe, the ring, the shoes, all symbols of restored identity were waiting. He needed only to return and remain. So it is with you. The end you desire is already prepared. The robe of wealth, the ring of love, the shoes of freedom, they wait for you. You need only arise inwardly and dwell there. Now let me speak of time. Many think that living in the end is pretending until it happens. That is error. Living in the end is knowing it already is. Time is only the unfolding of what is complete. You are not waiting for it, you are resting in it. Suppose you ordered a garment from a tailor. The moment you choose the fabric and the design, the garment in your imagination is complete. The tailor may need days to stitch it, but in your mind you already own it. You speak of it as yours. You live in the end of owning it. So it is with imagination. The act is done. The world may take time to stitch it, but you live already clothed in. This is why Scripture says, when you pray, believe that you have received, and you shall receive. Notice the tense. Not that you shall receive, but that you have received. Living in the end means living in the already. Now let us apply this to relationships, to career, to health. If you live in the end of love, you cease looking for signs of affection. You rest in knowing you are loved. If you live in the end of success, you cease worrying about how it will come. You carry the dignity of one established. If you live in the end of health, you cease rehearsing symptoms. You move as though vitality is natural. This way of living is not denial, it is alignment. You are not ignoring reality, you are shaping it. You are not blind to facts, you are loyal to truth, and the truth is imagination. So tonight, I ask you, where do you dwell? Do you dwell in lack, in longing, in waiting, or do you dwell in fulfillment, in satisfaction, in completion? You cannot serve two masters. You cannot live in the end and in the old simultaneously. Choose this day whom you will serve. If you choose the end, remain there. Refuse to be evicted by appearances. Refuse to rent space to doubt. Refuse to wander back to the old house. Make the end your permanent address. And when you do, life will mirror it. Events will conspire. Circumstances will reshape. The world will confirm what you already are. So let us practice tonight. Close your eyes, enter the end, feel the wish fulfilled, and then do not leave. Do not wander tomorrow, remain, make it your dwelling place. For if you live in the end as a permanent state, the end will live in you. And when the inner is established, the outer must conform. It is law, it is certainty, it is truth. Therefore live in the end, not as a fleeting visitor, but as the resident of your own fulfilled desire, and you will discover that imagination faithfully lived is creation itself. 8. The power of inner conversations. When I speak of imagination, I do not mean a fleeting picture alone. I mean the dialogue within you, the ceaseless stream of words the conversation you hold in the silence of your own mind. For creation is not only image but word, and the word spoken inwardly is the seed of reality. Tonight I tell you, your inner conversations shape your world. You may think that the words you speak aloud are powerful, and they are, but the words you whisper in secret, the unspoken dialogue that never leaves your lips, those are the true architects of destiny. Scripture declares, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. That word is imagination clothed in speech. Every word you utter within yourself is God speaking. Every inner sentence is a decree. And what you decree inwardly, you live outwardly. Think of the conversations you rehearse. When wronged, you replay arguments, justifying yourself. When anxious, you rehearse fears, imagining what might go wrong. When hopeful, you imagine what you long to hear. All these inner dialogues are creative acts. They are not idle. They are not neutral. They are seeds planted in the soil of consciousness. Let me ask you, what do you say to yourself in the secrecy of your heart? Do you tell yourself you are lacking, that life is against you, that others do not care? Or do you hear yourself congratulated, appreciated, loved, and secure? For whichever you entertain, you give life to. A woman once came to me troubled by her relationships. She said, "No one listens to me. I am overlooked. I am not valued." I asked her, "Tell me, what do you say to yourself when you lie awake at night?" She admitted, "I rehearse conversations where others dismiss me, where I try to prove myself, but no one hears." And I said, "My dear, you are faithful to the wrong voice. Change your inner speech, and the outer must follow." She began to imagine new conversations. She heard friends praising her, family valuing her, colleagues respecting her. Within weeks, her world transformed. She did not persuade others outwardly. She persuaded herself inwardly. Now consider your own life. Perhaps you long for success. Do you secretly argue with yourself that you are unworthy, that opportunities are scarce? Or do you hear your superior saying, "Well done, you have done splendidly"? Do you hear the applause of accomplishment? For until your inner speech changes, the outer can. The great secret is this: your inner conversations are prayers. And pray without ceasing means carry on a continuous dialogue of fulfillment. Do not pray as a beggar asking. Pray as one who already has. Speak inwardly as though it were true now. If you desire wealth, stop rehearsing poverty. Stop saying, "I cannot afford this. I never have enough." Instead, hear the bank teller saying, "Your account is in excellent standing." Hear your friends saying, "You are so generous." Hear the gratitude of those blessed by your abundance. Make that your inner conversation, and your world must echo it. If you desire love, cease rehearsing rejection. Stop hearing arguments. Stop replaying disappointments. Instead, hear the words of affection. Hear the laughter of companionship. Hear "I love you," spoken not once but as a continual inner dialogue. For when you hear it inwardly, you will live it outwardly. You see, the world is an echo chamber. It cannot help but mirror the conversations you hold within. If you quarrel inwardly, you will meet quarrels outwardly. If you rejoice inwardly, you will meet joy outwardly. If you affirm inwardly, you will see confirmation outwardly. Now you may ask, but how do I change my inner conversation when it feels so real to rehearse the old one? I tell you, you change it the same way you would redirect a conversation with a friend. If a friend spoke negatively, you would gently turn the subject. So too with yourself. When the old dialogue arises, do not condemn it. Simply redirect. Begin to hear what you wish instead. At first, it may feel strange, even forced. But if you persist, it will become natural. And once it becomes natural, it becomes reality. For imagination is not effort, but assumption. When you assume the inner voice of fulfillment, the world bends to it. Let us take an exercise. Tonight before you sleep, imagine a friend who would truly rejoice in your success. Bring him before you. Hear his voice. Hear him say, "I am so happy for you. What you have accomplished is wonderful." Do not merely see his lips move. Hear the words. Feel the joy of his tone. Make that conversation real. Fall asleep hearing it again and again. And you will find, in days or weeks, that very friend or another will echo those words in the outer world. Why? Because inner conversations outpicture themselves. They must, for the word becomes flesh. Now let me remind you of a law. You cannot hold two conversations at once. If you entertain doubt inwardly, you cancel faith. If you rehearse failure inwardly, you undo success. You must be loyal to the voice of fulfillment. Refuse to indulge the old dialogue. Refuse to give it life. The prophet Isaiah says, "My word shall not return unto me void, but it shall accomplish that which I please, and it shall prosper in the thing whereto I sent it." Your word, your inner speech, cannot return void. It must accomplish. If you send it out in fear, it will prosper in fear. If you send it out in faith, it will prosper in faith. Therefore, watch your words, for they are living seeds. Consider how often you talk to yourself. Every moment of the day you are speaking inwardly. Most are unconscious of it. They think only outer speech matters. But the true work is within. The true prayer is constant. The true shaping is silent. So I say to you, become aware. Listen to your inner conversations. Eavesdrop on yourself. And when you hear a voice of complaint, of fear, of lack, stop it. Replace it. Hear instead the words of victory, the words of love, the words of joy. I promise you this, if you remain faithful to the inner conversation of your fulfilled desire, you will see it in the world. Doors will open. People will say what you already heard. Events will echo what you already spoke. For nothing can withstand the creative word within you. Let me give you a simple practice. Throughout your day, pause and ask, what am I saying inwardly right now? Then deliberately shift it. If you are thinking of trouble, hear yourself saying, all is well. If you are anxious, hear the words, I am secure. If you are lonely, hear, I am loved. Make this your constant discipline, and your life will be a chorus of answered prayers. Now many will dismiss this. They will say, it is only imagination. It is only talking to myself. But I tell you, all creation is imagination. All manifestation begins with a word, and the word within you is God's word. Dare to speak differently within yourself, and you will see a different world. So tonight, let us practice together. Close your eyes. Bring before you someone you love. Hear them congratulating you on the very thing you desire. Hear their voice clearly. Repeat it until it is real. Let the words sink deep, and then carry that conversation into tomorrow, into the next day, until it becomes your permanent dialogue. And when you do, you will know the truth. Your inner conversations are the script of your destiny. Change the script, and you change the play. For imagination clothed in words is creation itself. 9. Living the law of assumption in daily practice. The law I have been giving you is not for one moment of meditation alone, nor for a single night's dream before you sleep. It is for the whole of life. It is the rhythm of your every breath, the secret music of every hour. To live by imagination is to live awake. It is to move from being a passive spectator of circumstances to the master and director of your destiny. And the key to this mastery is what I call the law of assumption. Now hear me well. Assumption, when persisted in, becomes fact. To assume is not to beg, not to hope, not to wish. It is to accept as true now what your reason and senses may deny. It is to occupy the state of the wish fulfilled until it is natural, until it clothes itself in form. You see, the outer world is nothing more than a mirror reflecting your inner state. If you desire change, you do not wrestle with the reflection. You change the face that looks into the mirror. That face is assumption. Whatever you assume yourself to be, that you shall see. Let us look at how this works in daily life. Suppose you desire health. If you continue to assume yourself sick, rehearsing symptoms, speaking of disease, identifying with weakness, no healing can come. But if even while symptoms persist, you assume yourself whole, vital, strong, if you walk in imagination as though health were yours already, the reflection must change. Or take the matter of wealth. If you assume yourself poor, if you constantly dwell on lack, then the world must echo lack. But if you assume abundance even before one coin arrives, even before one opportunity appears, if you live in the inner state of financial freedom, opportunities will arise, ideas will come, people will appear, and the outer must match the inner. Many resist this because they worship their senses. They say, but it is not true now. How can I assume what is not fact? I tell you, faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. If you wait for the senses to confirm, you remain their slave. If you dare to assume beyond the senses, you become their master. So how do you apply this law each day? Let me show you. The first practice is awareness. You must notice what state you occupy. Are you assuming defeat? Or are you assuming victory? Are you assuming loneliness? Or are you assuming companionship? Are you assuming fear? Or are you assuming security? The state you dwell in becomes your life. The second practice is discipline. When the old state calls you, when circumstances tempt you to return to the familiar identity, you must refuse. You must turn deliberately to the new assumption. You may say aloud, I am that now. You may close your eyes for a moment and feel yourself already being what you desire. This is the inner act that reshapes destiny. The third practice is persistence. One assumption held for a moment may flicker and die, but an assumption held steadily, repeatedly, lovingly, becomes the natural state. Once it is natural, it is certain. You need not struggle. You need only persist. Let me give you a story. A man once desired promotion at his work, yet year after year he was overlooked. He came to me saying, they will never advance me, they prefer others. I have no chance. I asked him, what do you assume yourself to be? He replied, I assume myself stuck. I said, then stuck you shall remain. But if you will dare assume the state of already being promoted, your world must bend. He took my word seriously. Each night, before sleep, he imagined a friend congratulating him, shaking his hand, saying, congratulations on your new position. He heard it until it was real. He assumed that state not once, but daily. Within 3 months, an unexpected reorganization occurred, and he was given the very role he desired. He did not force it outwardly. He assumed it inwardly. This is the law, and it does not fail. Now some say, but Neville, what of doubt? What if I cannot hold the assumption perfect? I tell you, a little doubt cannot destroy a persistent assumption. What matters is loyalty to the state. If you fall into the old state, simply return. If you wander, come back. If you falter, assume again. For the law rewards persistence, not perfection. Think of assumption as planting a seed. If you plant and water, the seed will grow. If in impatience you dig it up to see if it is sprouting, you delay it. If you plant and then say it cannot grow, you choke it. But if you trust, water and persist, in its season the harvest comes. And so with assumption, the moment you assume the seed is planted, the outer may not change instantly, but beneath the surface the soil of consciousness is at work. Invisible roots are forming, and in time the world reveals the fruit. Now let us go deep. Assumption is not only for great goals, but for every small act of life. If you wish to be received warmly by a friend, assume it before you meet. If you wish a letter to bring good news, assume it before you open. If you wish for a smooth journey, assume it before you travel. Make this your constant habit, and you will see wonders in the tiniest details of life. You see, imagination is not to be used sparingly. Like a rare jewel, it is the breath of life. It is the continual act of God within you. Every moment you are imagining. The question is, what are you imagining? Are you imagining in lack or in fullness, in fear or in faith, in defeat or in victory? So I say to you, live consciously, choose deliberately, assume the noblest, the loveliest, the highest. For as you sow in imagination, so shall you reap in the world. Let me remind you of the greatest assumption, that you are already the person you long to be. Not tomorrow, not someday, but now. The secret of life is to assume that you already are, and to live from that state, not to live toward it but from it. That little word from is everything. For example, if you desire to be free from fear, do not live striving to escape fear. Live from the state of already being fearless. If you desire love, do not live hoping love will come. Live from the state of already being loved. If you desire wealth, do not live chasing wealth. Live from the state of already being wealthy. This is the shift from striving to being, and once you live from it, the striving ends, for the assumption itself contains its fulfillment. Now let me tell you, the world will test your assumption. Circumstances may arise that contradict it. Do not be alarmed. That is the old state echoing, fading away. Stand firm, persist. The new state must solidify, and the old must dissolve. If you remain faithful, the promise cannot fail. Remember always, assumption is the bridge between the unseen and the seen. It is the invisible act that shapes visible events. The world is plastic to imagination. It bends, it molds, it reshapes according to the assumptions you hold. So tonight, as you go to your home, I ask you, what will you assume? Will you assume life is against you? Or will you assume life conspires for your good? Will you assume lack or abundance, sickness or health, rejection or love? Choose wisely, for the assumption you carry is the destiny you walk into. Do not wait for tomorrow. Begin now. Even in this very moment, you can assume differently. If you came here burdened, assume relief now. If you came here anxious, assume peace now. If you came here defeated, assume victory now. And as you walk through the days ahead, practice this law. In every meeting, every conversation, every task, assume the best. Assume success. Assume harmony. Assume fulfillment. Carry that inner state and watch as your outer life blossoms in its likeness. For I tell you, you are the operant power. Imagination creates reality. An assumption, live daily faithfully, joyfully, is the golden key that unlocks every door. 10. The creative power within. A final revelation. And now, my friends, we come to the final step. We have traveled together through imagination, through the construction of the end scene, through feeling, through assumption, through persistence, through inner conversations, and through the law of daily practice. Tonight I ask you to see clearly, to understand fully, that everything I have taught is but one principle. The creative power within you is God Himself, working through your imagination. You do not create by striving. You do not create by asking endlessly of the world outside. You create by realizing inwardly that the world outside is only a reflection of the world within. Your imagination is not a mere faculty. It is the very fountain of life. All that you see, all that you touch, all that moves and breathes is the expression of imagination. And when you understand this, the responsibility and the glory becomes yours. Tonight I want you to recognize that the end you have assumed, the scene you have entered with feeling, the state you have persisted in, is not fantasy. It is reality in its highest sense. The only reason it has not yet appeared in the outer world is because outer life must catch up to inner life. But it will, always. For the unseen is eternal, and the seen must reflect it. Do not fear appearances. Do not measure by what is visible. All that you behold as limitation, as delay, as lack, is the shadow of an old state. Shadows vanish when light is applied. Your imagination is that light. Your assumption is the lens through which reality must conform. Now, many of you have asked, how long will it take? How soon will my desires appear? And I answer, that question is meaningless. Time does not govern imagination. Time is the servant of assumption. Once you assume the end, you have already arrived. The world may seem slow to acknowledge it, but do not worry. Persist. Rest in the end. Be still in your knowing, and the outer must yield. Consider this. The seed planted in the ground does not force its way up by worry. It rests in the soil, unseen. Yet beneath the surface, the life is active. The sun and rain do not hurry it. They simply nourish it. In time it breaks forth. So too with your assumptions. What you plant inwardly in imagination is living, active, real. The world may take time to reflect it, but it cannot fail. I want you to understand the ultimate secret. You do not need to chase, to persuade, to struggle. All that is required is that you know yourself as the fulfilled state, that you live in it, that you feel it real. That is all. You do not need to see the evidence first. You do not need permission from the senses. You do not need anyone's approval. You simply need to assume and persist. That is faith in action. That is creation in motion. Now some of you may still harbor doubt. Is this not just imagining? How can imagination create reality? I tell you, imagination is not a pastime. Imagination is God within you, the divine power that shapes worlds. All the mountains, all the oceans, all the stars you see, they began as imagination. All life itself is imagination made manifest, and the same power that formed the universe resides in you. Why then do you limit yourself? Why then do you play small? Why then do you doubt what you already possess? I ask you tonight, will you claim this power? Will you dare to enter the scene fully? Will you assume the state completely? Will you persist against appearances, against reason, against delay? Will you speak the inner conversation of fulfillment and let nothing else disturb? If you do, you will see miracles. If you do, you will know joy. If you do, you will realize that life is not a struggle, but a dance with God within you. Let me illustrate. A man desired freedom, freedom from poverty, from limitation, From fear, he learned to imagine the life he desired. Each night he entered the scene with feeling. Each day he assumed the state of freedom. He spoke inwardly the conversations of abundance. He persisted against appearances, and one morning unexpectedly, he awoke to find doors opening, opportunities arising, circumstances aligning perfectly. His outer life mirrored his inner life. The unseen had manifested, and he knew in that moment that imagination was God acting through him. So I tell you tonight, do not wait, do not delay. The power is yours now. The scene is ready, the feeling is available, the state is yours to assume. You need only claim it. You need only remain faithful. You need only enter fully, persistently, joyfully. And when you do, the world must obey. Do not misunderstand me. I do not speak of effort or striving. I speak of knowing, of assuming, of resting in the end. Effort belongs to the old state. Faith belongs to the new. The moment you realize that you already are, effort ceases. The moment you assume, struggle vanishes. The moment you live in the end, all obstacles dissolve. And now my final counsel, let your life be a reflection of this truth. In every circumstance, inwardly assume the end. In every encounter, inwardly dwell in the fulfilled state. In every challenge, inwardly rest in the knowledge that imagination governs all. Make this your practice daily, hourly, moment by moment. Let your inner life be the architect of your outer life. Let your inner knowing dictate your world, and you will discover that there is no limit to what imagination can do. Tonight I want you to leave with this certainty. You are not bound by appearances. You are not bound by time. You are not bound by reason or circumstance. You are the divine creator, operating through imagination. All that you desire is already yours, waiting for your acknowledgement. All that you long for is already complete, waiting for your all that you hope for is already done, waiting for your persistent assumption. So go forth, enter your scene with feeling, assume your fulfilled state, persist against appearances, speak the inner conversation of joy, live the law of assumption daily, and you will see as surely as the sun rises, that imagination is not fantasy, it is reality. Imagination is the power of God within you, creating worlds, shaping lives, fulfilling desires. And remember, the final secret is simple. What you assume is true and persist in must. There is no exception. There is no escape. There is only faith lived as reality. You are the master, the architect, the divine creator. Your imagination is God. Your assumption is law. Your persistence is destiny. And when you act from this knowing, your life becomes the proof, the unseen made visible, the imagined made real, the impossible made inevitable. So tonight I leave you with this charge. Claim it fully, enter boldly, persist faithfully, live joyfully, and discover for yourself the astonishing truth that you are God in action, and all that you desire is already yours, waiting only for your recognition. The stage is yours. The scene is ready. Enter, assume, persist, and see your life transform.